All right, go ahead, Janice.
Okay, this is Janice Rodriguez. I don't even know what my role is for the Metro Human Relations Commission, calling this meeting to order. The Executive Committee of the Metro Human Relations Commission, April 13th, 2020.
Great, and if you, with your permission,
Yes.
We have Commissioner Jeremy Davis, Erwin Venick, Davey Tucker, and Oscar Miller, members of the executive board, and you would say that establishes quorum for this meeting. That's 5 of the 6 executive board members.
Thank you. Yes. So did we have our agenda to share on the screen or anything, or are we just going from what we had in the email?
I will not share the agenda on the screen unless you want me to. It will be shared in a link along with the recording.
Okay.
But with your permission, I could help move us through the agenda.
That'd be great.
Great. So the first matter is approval to conduct the meeting by electronic means.
Yeah.
And I would entertain a motion. I believe Erwin is knowledgeable on what that motion should contain.
I do have a motion, and I'd like to move that the items on the meeting agenda constitute essential business of this commission. Meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans considering the COVID-19 outbreak, and any rule that conflicts with the governor's Executive Order 16 permitting electronic meetings be suspended.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Go ahead.
And just for clarity, I believe that legal advises that you have an actual roll call vote for any motion taken virtually.
Okay.
So
let's see. So moving through the participants here in the meeting, let's see. Commissioner Venick?
I approve. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Commissioner Tucker?
Yes.
Okay. Seeing who's on my screen.
Commissioner
Miller?
Yes.
And Commissioner Davis?
Yes.
Okay. And Commissioner Rodriguez? Yeah. All right. So we have none opposed, and hearing with none opposed, the motion passes. Moving forward.
thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is old business, but budget update. So I had a conversation with the mayor's office with Kristen Wilson, who I should be able to tell you her title, though. I believe it's basically like Chief Operating Officer.
Okay.
And I see we're being joined by Commissioner Richmond. Let me make sure she can hear us. Commissioner Richmond, can you hear us? All right, we're working out the kinks here. Just a second. You're not muted on our end, Dr. Richmond.
And now I can hear you, but now I can't see you.
If any of you have a significant problem with the WebEx, you can also dial in. The agenda contains call-in numbers that you use.
My experience with some of these programs is that they tend to work. They tend to work better if you don't use video.
Yes.
No, that's true. So if you want to turn the video off, you could still, down at the bottom, you should see options to turn your video off. There's a little camera that says stop my video.
Well, I'm having difficulty turning my video off.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
No.
If you look down at the bottom, you'll see a stop my video. Mm-hmm.
Here we go. Okay.
Okay, great. So welcome again, everybody. I know this is a steep learning curve for us. That's also true for Metro IT and for legal, like for all of us. It is not business as usual. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you all and get some direction and to give you some updates on what we're working on. We were at the old business and the agenda, the budget update. So snapshot is this: there's a lot of uncertainty about our budget. If you had an opportunity to listen to the mayor's State of Metro, he made clear that we're going to be that we were really going to face a challenge in meeting our needs and goals. So it will likely be an increase in the property tax rate, but there may also be some reductions in existing budgets. I think that it's fair to say that we're not likely to see any improvements in the budget for next fiscal year, and we may see some reductions and hopefully won't be affected if there are any furloughs, which I've had no confirmation but I think it's not, I don't think there's anything that's off the table at this point. We are being asked to save as much as we can from our current budget, including, meeting the savings goals that were in place, but saving even more if we are able to do so. So basically being asked to stick to essential business. We've already postponed the Music City Iftar, which have been, I believe, May 6th. And we had made the decision with our partner to, with the Faith and Culture Center, to postpone that event in light of obviously the COVID-19 and the restrictions on large group gatherings. And it's a pretty large group gathering. That's, it's one of our most popular events. And, it's 350 to 400 people breaking bread together at that event. So, we've talked about postponing it, though, given the uncertainty with our budget and with, when are we all going to be able to come out of the not necessarily quarantine, but the stay at home safety suggestions. I don't know. It may very well be that it makes the most sense to cancel the event and, any substitute program that we might do with Faith and Culture Center this year. But I wanted your feedback on that.
This is Janice. What are you thinking? I mean, there's no way to judge when we might be able to convene any kind of meeting or any kind of gathering like that. There's really not any good metric out there to give us any real clue. And then, what else do we have coming up in the fall potentially? I mean, I would say that we wouldn't be able to do anything until the fall. Well, you have other things that could be. We have other events. Or
yeah, we have obviously the biggest event is the Celebrate Nashville, and I mean that's like 65,000 people,
right?
That we do in collaboration with Parks and the nonprofit Celebrate Nashville and a few other, and several other partners.
Yeah.
And, we do make a sizable monetary or financial contribution to that program, to that event. But we have that. I know we're in conversation with with MNPD on how we might be able to accomplish the goals of our mobile diversity seminar within this crisis.
Right.
The next one, I believe, is scheduled for July. Barbara, I just unmuted you. July is right, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, we're looking at July, actually two. One's for July the 27th for the fourth class, and they're looking for a day for the latter class.
Okay. So we're going to be in conversation with them and with our community partners on how we can sort of meet our goals for that training while also, keeping everybody safe.
I'm getting a little bit of feedback from, I don't know, from maybe your voice, you're echoing through somebody else's microphone that's not turned off. But I wanted to ask, have we thought about, or is anybody considering doing a virtual iftar of any sort, where, using Zoom or other technology to gather, to have that kind of online gathering? There's some way that we can participate in something like that, or do you know of anybody that would this be something that your office would want to take on, or do you know of anybody trying to do something that we could collaborate with?
Well, my suspicion, and by the way, if everybody can figure out like how to mute and unmute themselves, that's helpful. So that will likely reduce the feedback that Janice was hearing. So if you mute yourself while you're not talking, hopefully that will help. My suspicion is that there are likely to be many virtual iftar gatherings, just as there were lots of Seder gatherings and Easter gatherings. And, you know, I don't know how... I don't know how much value there is in sponsoring or co-sponsoring one of those, you know, because for us, obviously, it's not about the religious celebration. It's about, you know, bringing people together to break bread, to have a civic conversation, you know, during the month of Ramadan. So there may be some of our partners, including Faith and Culture Center, who we work with every year on the iftar, there may be opportunities for us to participate in a virtual sort of bringing people together.
So Mel?
Yes.
Going back with your conversation with Kristen Wilson, do you have any sense of when you might have a clue about what the budget holds for the commission?
So, I don't think anybody yet knows when the mayor's office is going to release their budget, but I think it will be probably not at the end of this week, but by the end of next week. But that being said, it was made clear in that conversation, and I know to lots of other department heads, that you know, what comes out in a week or two may not be anything that resembles what's actually adopted 2 months from now or implemented 2 months from now. And in part, that's because there are a number of unknowns, particularly how Metro will be allowed to use federal funds from the CARES Act, first of all, right? So and then there's going to be other money coming. So we have money from HUD and money that, you know, through that legislative package. And the last I have heard was that there was uncertainty about whether cities or municipalities could use the money that was coming to them through that act to make up budget shortfalls, or if there were going to be restrictions on using it for COVID-19 related expenses only, which just frankly, I think would be tragic, right? Because, you know, we are facing significant revenue shortfalls. So there's not clarity on how we're going to be able to use that money. So until we know that, I think that it's likely that you know, what they put out 2 weeks from now might not look anything like what's actually adopted.
So do we, so the question, I mean, I don't think there's really any question about whether we try to do an iftar later. Probably not going to, just maybe not this year, and focus, if there is a Celebrate Nashville, that we put our energy and time into that larger event.
Well, we can actually defer that question, I think, until later in the agenda when we talk about priorities.
Okay.
But I will say that, you know, it is of relevance because, you know, I'm looking to guidance from you all on what is essential and what should we be spending our limited budget on, both during this crisis and then, immediately following. Now, we don't know what the budget's going to look like next year, so obviously you can't answer the specifics. But it does seem to me that we're going to have a little bit of savings in the budget, marginal savings from, not being in the office or hosting any public meetings or trainings, some printing, supplies, and if we are not sponsoring or co-sponsoring large events where people gather, that provides a sense of savings, right? Because, we have several $1,000s that we use every year to sponsor and co-sponsor these larger events. That's the only update I really have on the budget, but I'm interested if you have any other questions about the budget at this time.
Hey, Melody, this is Tucker.
Hey, Tucker.
Are we being forced is there some number that's being said you must cut your budget by X, or any of that?
So far, the only concrete instruction was the savings that we have already accommodated, right? There was like the $13,000 in budget savings. The mayor's budget hasn't come out yet, so it is a possibility that budget will include across the board reductions, like some percentage. It may
no requirement on your part per se.
I'm sorry?
But there's no requirement on your part per se.
No, not at this time.
Okay, well,
let me take that back to say that, yes, there was a second instruction. In addition to the required savings of $13,000, there was also a second request for any additional savings we might be able to do. And Mark and I worked on this together. We told finance that we could most definitely save an additional $2,500.
Okay.
From this budget. And I know that's really tiny, but guess what? Our budget is tiny.
Well, I just remember when you initially talked a couple months ago about the savings that we were required to do, and when you gave the report on it, then it just sounded like, as you went through all the budget items, that you had to stretch and push just to get that done. So I guess I'm just saying that in the context of I hear you on the budget piece, and I don't know what else it is that you can do at this point. And I also don't think we know what's going to happen going forward, particularly with this $300 million that the administration is saying that they're short and going to have to make up the shortfall.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. And
that's just my comments on the issue.
Yeah. Well, we have no clarity yet. And like I said, it could be anything from, status quo to across the board cuts and furloughs. Now, we're also under a hiring freeze. So That is, by the way, going to affect our department. I'm very excited for Sarah, but very sad for all of us. Sarah will begin a PhD program in the fall in Cincinnati. So depending on how long the hiring freeze lasts, it may be that I won't be able to fill Sarah's position for some period of time. Which of course provides a budget savings, but also means we're down a quarter of our staff.
So would that budget freeze preclude you from refilling a position, or would the freeze, if it's in effect, mean that if you lose a position during a freeze, that you can't hire that position back?
No, the freeze, it means that without a granted exception, you can't fill any position, even if it was vacated post freeze. So no, I would not be able to fill it unless we get an exception.
Okay.
Yeah, which, I think we have good argument for exception from a hiring freeze, given how small our staff is, right? There's only 4 of us. So
right.
If we have an unfilled position, like I said, that's a quarter of our staff. That's really significant for a department our size, compared to a department that has 100 people.
Right. Well, I mean, and so I think at this point, all that's down the road, or if there's something we need to do on the front end to try to see about this. I mean, because to lose 25% of your workforce is not a good thing.
No. Yeah, I agreed. Well, if there are no other questions about the budget, I think we can move to the next agenda item. To the meat of what we're doing here, some policy updates. Last week we released your policy recommendation recommending that the mayor's office and that Metro Council use the newly created performance measurement system to build equity goals and population level improvements into the metrics. I've gotten a pretty good response already from that recommendation. I received a request from the mayor's transportation team to work with them to build an equity lens and to build equity metrics into their processes. So I had a really great meeting with Faye DeMassimo, Eric Brown, Mary Beth Eichard, and Fabian Bedney, and they included Diego Eguerte. Diego is the head of the performance management team, or performance measurement team in the mayor's office. So they're very excited about being able to build an equity lens and build equity metrics into what they're doing. And then to be an example for other departments that, look, we can do this. So good on you guys. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that meeting or that particular policy recommendation. That we also got a really good response from community. So I was asked to put together a webinar training about the use of equity lenses in other cities, and to talk to constituents about what would be advocating for. And I'm working on that this week.
So how do you foresee things moving forward with transportation folks?
So I think that the way we're going to do it is I'm going to work on doing some literature review, which I wanted to anyway, but, do a little bit more literature review on like transportation questions specifically and, other cities employing equity metrics in their transportation plan. And there are examples, right? So I want to do some literature review, then share that with their team. And I know that Faye DeMassimo has a couple of examples too. So we'll look at, what metrics other cities are using. And I think that, it's not going to be a full scale equity lens, but I think that what we can do is even just right away, based on the literature and the goals of that transportation team and the needs, that Nashvillians have expressed in, they've been doing these like public meetings. And so, the needs that Nashvillians have expressed, our goal is to agree or to, sort of rest right now on 3 or 4 equity metrics that can be built into the performance management system for that transportation team. But that's how we're going to do it.
Who's the community organization that are wanting your, or is that Houston?
I'm sorry, Janice, would you repeat that?
Sure. You said a community organization was interested in your webinar, or yeah.
Yeah, so I have for a while now served on the steering committee of A Voice for the Reduction of Poverty. And I would say Commissioner Vennick also serves on that steering committee. And there are a number of organizations that are represented at that table, including NOAA and Labor and Stand Up Nashville and Catholic Charities. And I'm sure I'm missing many others, but it's been a sort of rotating open table. Open Table, by the way, is also there, the homeless advocates. And so they have, as a collective, been really interested in this concept and advocating through their constituencies. So they've asked me to do that. I've also reached out to Ashford Hughes to join me in doing the webinar because he had done some work on building equity lenses and had done some trainings with national organizations on it. So I think that he would be useful in that conversation.
Yeah, hi. I'm sorry. Did Janice have a follow-up? I guess she's muted herself. I apologize. I haven't looked at the equity report yet. I've been busy grading papers, but by any chance, did that cover the healthcare benefits thing that we've been talking about with HR for transgender employees, or was that going to come up later? Because somebody actually asked me about it on Saturday, and I want to make sure that doesn't sort of fall through the cracks in the middle of all of this.
Oh, well, I think that's not necessarily a separate question from an equity lens, but the very specific policy recommendation that I'm talking about is in the performance measurement system that Metro is building. Right? So, and this is new with this mayor, with the Cooper's administration. So the recommendation is, right, if we're going to build a performance measurement system, that's an ideal opportunity to build equity in an equity lens into measuring how we are doing as a city and how departments are, how they're serving constituents and meeting goals. But I'm happy to also talk to you about our other policy recommendation, right? That equity, we're in the health program, the health services that we get through Metro. So no, I don't want that to fall through the cracks. And I'd be happy to hear what you heard on Saturday.
Well, somebody was just simply asking me where it stood. She knew that we had been talking about it, where we were working at it. I had mentioned, of course, the mayor's office. We were talking with HR about getting the mayor's office to appoint an ad hoc committee or whatever the title was to make recommendations to the benefit board. But, you know, I just, with everything else that's been going on, I didn't know where that stood at the present time. And because I think there was, you know, we were looking at trying to get that done, certainly at least by the end of the year, maybe by the end of the summer. And I couldn't recall off the top of my head. She kind of just asked me in the middle of another meeting. And so I only had a partial answer for her. And I just said I'd follow up on it today.
Okay. Well, I have not heard anything, but following this meeting, I'll take as an action item for me and for my office that we follow up with Shannon Hall, Human Resources, and with the mayor's office on, you know, where are we at on this? And again, I know we're in the middle of a crisis, but, you know, just as I stated, you know, with regard to the equity lens and performance measurement, that, you know, it's at times of crisis that's where the rubber hits the road, right? That's where the disparities in health access make the most difference. So I'm happy to raise that with them following this meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just one point of clarification with regard to the transportation, folks.
Yes.
So even though this policy recommendation is within the context of a performance management team initiatives, so they wanted the equity lens for more broader purposes and looking at transportation within the city, et cetera. Is that what they're thinking about? Or are they using that as in performance somehow there too? My question makes sense.
Yeah. So the way it's working now, each department, in collaboration with the performance management team, have to build performance metrics that, you know, will be tracked and followed either, you know, weekly, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. And our recommendation is this is an ideal opportunity to build equity into, right, to build an equity lens into how we measure our success. And so for some departments, that's going to look different, and, you know, than other departments. But I think the transportation team, they themselves have to build performance metrics. And so they have really grabbed on to the idea of an equity lens and building that into the way they're measuring their success from the beginning. And I think that's a really great team to do that, right? Because the transportation has a significant impact on all different things that we, and that you all care about, right? Like health disparities and access to jobs, access to different economic opportunities, you name it, right? Health, like it has such a significant broad impact that
Right.
equity into their measurements for success at the beginning is really important. But I also think that it will show other departments that this isn't just, pie in the sky, let's think about equity. Like, look, there are actual measurements that can be made and incorporated. And so working with the transportation team, we'll have an example, right? It's like, here's how the transportation team did it. Now let us help you do it too.
I guess, Melanie, I've got a question. What can we do for a not only broader application of this equity lens, but also just bringing it to a larger metro discussion?
So I honestly think the best example I have seen in the country has been Tacoma, Washington. Tacoma built a platform that is race forward and explicitly about equity, showing, population, in disparities across demographics and in parts of their city. And they require every one of their departments to engage with that platform and to set goals for themselves as part of their budget process. Now, that would be, to me, ideal.
So how or what do we need to possibly think about as a way of getting greater exposure for a wider conversation in Metro, since we've put in the work, we got the document, while I'm good with this whole transportation piece, my hope has always been that there would be a larger recognition and application of the equity lens, even as it relates to the Metro Council or the way purchasing and codes, that I think there's an implication for it that I just want us to possibly talk about. How do we amplify that? How do we create this larger discussion around it so that we can ultimately Tacoma, Washington type situation?
Yeah. Well, I think the first real question is, how do constituents judge whether Metro is successfully and adequately serving their needs? And what the leaders in Metro, including council members and the mayor, need to hear is that part of the answer to that is we judge it based on, are you doing it equitably? Are you actually making policies and making your decisions about the allocation of power and resources, really trying to address both historical and current discrimination and disparities in in how we serve people. And, maybe that's like too fluffy, but I think what they need to hear is that constituents really do care about that.
Okay, so, and I hear you, and I believe they do also. I guess more pointedly, I'm asking, what do you need me to do, and what can I do with this document as I go about doing whatever it is I try to do? Because that equity lens piece has always been an interesting component for me, that ultimately, how do we race or push or expose it in some systematic kind of way to where that can create, because until we have these larger discussions with these other metro areas and even with the mayor, I mean, ultimately, as you start talking about, is this something, because I think it's going to take political will to get to move in any real sense toward considering what implications come when you apply an equity lens to a process that's been concretized for years.
Well, first and foremost, we need to have better data, and we need a dedication to collecting data that can actually speak to equity, right? So, for example, something that we'll talk about in just a minute, we don't have demographics on COVID-19, people who have tested positive and are experiencing COVID-19 in this city. We don't have racial demographics on. So how can we even begin to talk about equitable access to healthcare to treat COVID-19 if we don't even have the most basic demographic information? So, first of all, and I know this probably maybe it sounds like it's in the weeds, but like this is how we do it, right? We don't have a chief data officer anymore, and we don't have any real guidance on what kind of data departments should be collecting in order to do a decent equity analysis. So I think that this performance management system that they're putting together, to me, is like, this is the opportunity for us to say, all right, if you're going to start measuring using numbers and platforms on whether or not metro departments are performing sufficiently or to expectations, we need equity to be one of those expectations, and we need to be collecting the data that can show it.
Mel.
Yes.
I agree with Commissioner Davies. What I'm hearing is that it'd be great if we had a mandate that all departments institute that, and certainly be doing something to work toward that. But where we are right now, you do have the transportation department coming to you. Is there a way that you can use that? We can use that to get other departments rapidly and get more momentum going?
Yes, I think the answer is just flat out yes, right? What we're asking for is a mandate, but in the interim, there are several departments who I think their leadership would be invested in this and willing to engage it. So transportation team, the health department, social services, I could, name several others that I think are some of them low-hanging fruit, right? To say, yeah, we too want to ensure that we are being measured in a way that includes equity as a stated goal. And we are going to find the metrics within our department and the way in which we serve people to measure it.
So you already have a plan for building at the grassroots level, like you just mentioned. You have targeted several departments and you plan to contact them?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And it would be really nice if, working with the transportation team, I can come out of it with a sort of here's the protocol. Here's a way in which we can work together to get that done, and show them that this is how the transportation team did it. Let us work with you to build some equity goals into the performance management. And I'll tell you, the performance management team is really excited about it. So, they, absent a mandate from the mayor or from Metro Council, the performance management or performance measurement team can't require departments to do it. But if the department heads come to them and say, we want to include an equity lens or equity metrics into our performance management, then they've assured me that they're happy to work with departments to build that. Make sense?
Yes, absolutely. So what we need is some people calling these departments, asking them where they're how they include equity.
That's right. Or, call your council member in our at-large and call the mayor's office and say, hey, we made this policy recommendation. We'd like to see a mandate that departments start to consider, at least start to consider how they can include equity metrics in the performance management. All right. Any other questions on that?
Just one final thought. I noticed that Sarah was a co-author, or she had a byline on the policy recommendation. Going forward, I mean, with this whole equity lens, her absence, will that be a dramatic impact? And can we use that kind of for leverage as far as advocating, getting somebody else in line? I just want to know how critical is her role in the development of policies like this and the furtherance of this type initiative.
Yeah, I mean, her role is critical. Well, here's the thing. I think all of our roles are critical, right? Think about this. 5 years ago, and I was lucky enough to be hired to be your executive director. I restructured the staff, and one of the things that I did was I ensured that, if we only have 4 people, right, that all 4 of our staff members have very clear substantive roles to play. So we don't have any administrative staff. I don't have an executive assistant. We don't have a receptionist, right? We have me and then 3 laterals that pretty much lead up to three of the most important things we do, right? So community engagement, research and policy, and events and programming. And Mark does a lot of our event logistics, and all of our back office. And without Sarah or somebody in that position, frankly, it will fall for the most part to me to lead all of our policy and research work, which to me makes me want to cry. But, you know, and we may have a little bit of space in the budget to, you know, have paid, you know, have stipends for interns to assist with that. But Sarah is the lead on any of the policy or research that we do. And I do it hand in hand with her, but, you know, I let her lead that.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I understood her role and I do agree that everyone is critical and what you all do, you know, there's not a lot of clerical or administrative help. It's all content for the most part, you know, what you're creating there. I appreciate that. That'll be a strong argument for an exception to perhaps the hiring freeze. That was my.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, you know, if you look at the responsibilities laid out in the Metro Code for our office, I feel confident that I can make a strong argument that, you know, we're going to struggle to meet some of the basics without somebody in that position. Another policy update, language access. I just wanted to let you all know that we finally have the contracts in place for language access vendors. And I'm going to be sending out the resource guide to all the departments probably by the end of this week. And if we're going to be working home for much longer, then I'm going to have to consider doing a virtual training for Title VI coordinators in order to ensure compliance with federal and state grants, because the grantees it's coming around at the time where they're going to have to start doing self-reporting. And I want Metro departments that are receiving federal and state funds to be able to affirmatively state that they have received Title VI training from us, just, you know, to protect those funds.
Very good. Can we get a copy of that resource report, or is this something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Be nice to see.
Yes, and this is following up on the, you know, language access study and report. And, you know, so we finally have actual contracts in place there. You know, my department is the lead Metro agency on the Metro-wide open contracts for the vendors. And so this is the resource guide for like how to use language access resources. So I'd be happy to share that with all of you. And Commissioner Tucker, I wondered if you had any update on money bail, cash bail rule, the court rule. Like, has this crisis overshadowed any of that, or do you have an update for us?
No. About 2 weeks ago, the court granted the preliminary injunction that we asked for when we originally filed the lawsuit. So they have suspended the rule, and I'm waiting to get a update on their response. Metro Legal was removed as the group that was representing the criminal court clerk. So they're saying the proper venue would be through the Attorney General's office. We've yet to hear a response from them as it relates to the lawsuit. But that's where we are with the bail issue. But tied to that, the Supreme Court answered a brief that Don Diener filled out on behalf of several other groups, asking about protocol and procedures for the release of certain groups of inmates. And so you've seen this local conversation going on. It's still pretty much, that's still an ongoing issue in that you have certain very nonviolent offenders, certain people who are only incarcerated because they don't have bail, and which Metro has created their own paradox there. If bail is not necessarily for public safety, so a violent person who posts bail, who has a bail, financially afford to post it, it's not fair for the same person who doesn't have the money. So I don't understand what's going on right now, but that's where we're the same group in the money bail. We're working and trying to get as many people out of the jails as possible.
Okay. Yes. Well, thank you so much for that update. And was that injunction, so it was in the court case that you had discussed with us before, right? So it's a preliminary injunction.
Right, which for all intents and purposes for the bail fund, Rule 10B, they can no longer do it. The greater now is who is going to represent the criminal court clerk in this lawsuit going forward. And the court was clear not to extend that to individuals who really suffer harm also from this rule. So that's where we are with it.
Okay. And is there a written
yes
memo on that injunction? Yeah, will you share that with me so I could send it out to people who are interested?
Yes, I sure will.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then to some new business, as I mentioned, we have not seen any demographic data from Davidson County on the impact of COVID-19 and other than gender. I did ask Kristen Wilson in the mayor's office about this last week. And as there was data coming out from other cities that have shown that Black and immigrant communities are being disproportionately affected and infected by COVID-19. Kristen said the CDC was not requiring that information before, so many of the providers weren't reporting it, such that the mayor's office could report on it. She did assure me that was a concern for the mayor's office and for the health department, and they were interested in how they can get that information, even if the CDC was not requiring it. I also think that nationally, there's an effort going forward to collect and report it. But unfortunately, we just don't have the data here in Nashville to analyze it. If any of you have heard otherwise, I'd like to hear. Well, I guess I'll take your sign as affirmation. But yeah, there's just, we just don't have that data. But my, just anecdotally and just common sense would suggest that, our communities are, we're not that different. So my suspicion is that the data would bear out that vulnerable communities in Nashville are being disproportionately affected. And I do know also, with the tornadoes from last month, we've been working with community advocates on connecting them to resources, building new relationships to address the ongoing impact from the tornadoes. And what's been most frustrating, perhaps, is lack of clarity on who is leading from the mayor's office or from Metro in general on tornado recovery. It's in some ways that fallen to the wayside once we had some significant numbers on COVID-19. But I've been working on meeting virtually with Gideon's Army and Equity Alliance and some others in North Nashville who are still diligently working on getting resources to folks there after the tornado. I'm interested in hearing any reports from your own communities, or if you're seeing something or experiencing something that we could be speaking to in the midst of this crisis.
I just want to echo your concern about the tornado, attention to tornado victims in this crisis. I mean, I am residing in North Nashville area, and I see it on a daily basis, and I don't know, is anything being done from a public works standpoint? Do you know of anything that's happening to continue to address any issues, or do we have any information about reconstruction of I know parks are pretty much out of commission for general consumption, but neighborhood parks here are still in disarray, and nothing's happening toward that. I just didn't know anything about public works.
Well, what I do know is for 2 weeks following the tornadoes, there was some regular communication from the Office of Emergency Management that included public works, sort of laying out what they were working on and how many streets were reopened. And, I think they were giving information daily for at least a week and a half. And then that's, when the whole world, at least for us here in Nashville, seemed to have changed with coronavirus. And I have not seen a single update from them since then. I know that they've diverted a lot of resources from the Office of Emergency Management from tornado recovery to COVID-19. But I'm happy to ask if anybody is still getting daily updates, and I could ask our contact in the mayor's office. Are they getting updates from Public Works, and is that work completely on hold? And then report back to you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. any other concerns or issues that we could be speaking to immediately that you can advise on?
Well, I did want to, I was just doing a little research at the Tennessee Department of Health, and demographic information is, it's divided among major racial groups of the current cases. I mean, white, Black, other, multiracial, Asian, and then a number that is marked pending. And then as well, there's Hispanic, or non-Hispanic as a subcategory of that.
Is that available by county, or is that, those are statewide numbers?
It is, well, yeah, I guess on the surface it's statewide, but one would think well, no, wait a minute, cases in, yeah, it's a little bit,
right.
I have to drill down just probably a little bit, but I wonder if the data set might be available to parse, out from if it's available, in its raw data from the Department of Health, because obviously it's there on race. I mean, they had to aggregate the racial information.
Mm-hmm.
So it had to come, from the sources. But anyway, yeah. But yeah, it's not at least not on this this document that their public facing document doesn't have it listed county by county and broken down to that level that I can tell.
Yeah, and I haven't seen anything that provides that either.
Okay. I just wanted, yeah. So I'm just, so my assumption is that, yeah, the raw data is there, but it's, I don't know what, I mean, and there are transparency, rules within the Department of Health, that one should be able to, get that data.
Yeah, well, I raised, it's been a full week since I raised this with the mayor's office. So I told Mary Falls that I would call her after this meeting. She couldn't make this meeting, but she asked me to call her later this evening to follow up on some issues. And that's first on my list. Like, hey, I asked you guys a week ago, and where are we on it? So I'll be able to report back to you.
Very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And on the agenda, so, moving to broader questions, which you don't necessarily have to answer in this meeting, but I think that it's important for you to start thinking about to give us some guidance. Our priorities during the crisis and immediately after, right? So our team, we're working from home, like most of you, if not all of you. It definitely limits our ability to engage with the community, but we are starting to figure out how to be effective in this new normal. I know that I'm on these calls quite a bit, just like all of you are. I'm encouraging my staff to participate in calls with community members and town halls that different organizations are putting on. And, to the extent that we would have gone to whatever the town hall was when it was being held somewhere, we'll join in the Facebook Live or whatever it is, so we can continue to sort of hear from constituents and what their experiences are, so we can be most effective. In researching and drafting our State of Black Nashville report, the team were just starting to on their focus groups in collaboration with partners across different sectors. I think depending on how long we're working from home, I think that we may need to consider how we can do those focus groups remotely to ensure that that work continues rather than it being on hold for months and not knowing when we're really going to go back to normal. This might be the new normal for a little while. And then, of course, generally, we're not hosting or sponsoring events in the next couple months. So I want us to concentrate on priorities that can be accomplished remotely and can keep the staff safe and community members safe. And, I just want to... It's very, it's a little disheartening, and I'm sure this is true for everyone. We did the annual report from last calendar year. Big thanks to our Humphrey Fellow who drafted that for us. But reviewing it, it really makes me say, my God, we accomplished so much last year, and I can't see how it's even remotely possible that we're going to be able to reach as many constituents as effectively as we did last year, given this crisis. So I want to concentrate on what you guys care about.
So one thing that strikes me, and I don't know how politic this would be, but clearly there's going to be a radical reworking of Metro's budget next year. We've already heard Mayor making reference to cutting $100 million out of the Metro school budget.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering whether or not, in line with our mission, it would be appropriate for us to offer our own observation about the proposed budget when it comes out from a human relations perspective.
I think that would be perfectly appropriate. If you want me to find the part of the code that we think that's important for that, I'm happy to pass that along. But the code says that the commission can provide legislative and policy advice to both the mayor's office and to Metro Council on issues related to civil rights and human rights. And the budget is a legislative action.
Well, it just sort of strikes me that is something that we should probably take a look at.
Okay. I agree with you. And I think that it dovetails perfectly with leading the charge that equity should be a stated metric in how we gauge those success in serving constituents. Okay, well, unless there's other specific recommendations, I'm going to continue with Title VI and training and guidance in language access for departments. I'm going to continue working on the policy recommendation related to the equity lens. Where I'm going to get with my team to talk about, in the event that we're working from home for the next 2 months, if thinking about doing focus group collaborations for State of Black Nashville, remotely is the way that we should move forward. And I'll certainly pass along whatever the budget is to you as soon as I see it.
Okay.
That's all that is on. Well, now if there are announcements.
This is Janice Rodriguez, and I would just invite you all, if you do have downtime and want to take online classes, this is a perfect opportunity to bring your language skills up to date and improve. So, just making sure that you're aware, that we've all had to switch to online, and so if you're tired of Netflix and rather do something else. Thanks.
Okay, Janice, if you want to.
Yeah. Are there any other announcements? No. Okay. If there are no other announcements, I'll. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that motion was Commissioner Richmond, seconded by Commissioner Miller.
Correct. Do we need to take a voice vote on adjourning? I mean, a roll call?
I mean, I guess you have to. I don't think he's going to appeal your decision to adjourn. But.
Commissioner Vennick.
Aye.
Let's see. And we have, we already have Commissioner Miller and Commissioner, I guess Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
Commissioner Richmond.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see who else is here. Commissioner Tucker.
Nope, he's gone. So it's only
and we lost. Okay. So and then Commissioner Rodriguez says yes. So any opposed? No. I think we got this carried. Motion is carried. Sorry, it's just a little confusing. Yeah. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.